insurance broker. So I've been with them a little over a year, but overall I've been in the SEO space / digital marketing space since 2011. So I've worked with anywhere from enterprise clients up to local SEO, and I've also done some affiliate SEO where I've sold websites. So I'm pretty comfortable talking about SEO and happy to kind of dip in to talk about how AI is kind of changing the game for both digital marketing and SEO, and kind of just some ways I am using it in my workflow. So let me figure out how to share my screen, which I think is this. And then 1 second, sorry. Okay. Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
No, I cannot see your screen right now, but maybe let me see.
Is it working now? I pressed shared content, so I'm not, unless there's a different way of doing it. So I can like see it on the screen.
You can, maybe you are able to see it, but I'm not being able to see your screen.
Weird. Trying to just look at this. Let me try to reshare.
Let me see in the audience view that how audience is watching this webinar.
Okay. Let's try again. Did that change it at all? It says I'm sharing my screen, so I'm not sure. It says you are sharing your screen. Below is a smaller version of what attendees are seeing in the room, but you're saying you can't see it, correct?
Okay, if attendees are watching it, then you may continue it.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so put together this slideshow that I initially presented at my work, but there's still a lot of stuff that's beneficial in here. Doing this where it does this weird view. So I'm just going to go through the slides manually. Yeah, so this is the first session, and this slide actually kind of goes over a background of AI. So even though it's kind of like exploding right now, AI has actually been around since the 1950s. So one of the first AI programs was like, I'm not sure to pronounce it as a term, but it's SHRDLU. So which was released by I think a gentleman from MIT. And then in the early 2000s, companies kind of started using it. So I know they had Smarter Child by ActiveBuddy, and then I think America Online was using some of it. Today, AI is kind of being used for content creation as well as many other uses. And the definition of AI content is essentially content that is generated through artificial intelligence. Usually, you're essentially giving the program or software a prompt, and they basically will create the content based on some of the things you mentioned in there. And like I mentioned, AI covers more than just text. It's also imagery, voice, chat, and content. And you can kind of see a brief timeline and some of the images in the slideshare. I mean, the slideshow I actually did use, it's called Dolly, which I'm going to go over, but essentially it's allows you to create AI images. So this is like one of them here. And then the big players, at least right now in the automated generation informational content. As most of you know, or if not know, the biggest one I would say is OpenAI. Primarily, most people are using ChatGPT, and it's been pretty big since they initially had the launch. I think they had like 100 million users in under 2 months, which is like I think the fastest all time maybe in user acquisition. So that's been pretty big. And Microsoft actually owns OpenAI now, so they've been working exclusively kind of using that within their search engine. So if you've done any searches on Bing recently, you can see there's an option to kind of ask the AI to essentially help you out there. Google Bard, which is out of beta now, but it's actually accesses real time data versus ChatGPT, where you actually have to use a plugin to access real time data. So that's kind of differs there. Jasper AI, which is actually uses the Open AI, so that's helps you create content there. And then Phrase AI, which I think also utilizes OpenAI's API to essentially create content. And yeah, like I was mentioning, ChatGPT is now in Bing search. So essentially, it'll kind of give you options where you can kind of type out a bit longer queries, essentially asking for more robust things. And you can even have it like create a meal plan or like create a workout for you. So it's pretty cool as how it's gotten uh, evolved pretty fast, and I would say about a year, and it's like evolving at like an astronomical pace. So it's pretty cool to see how far it's come in, I guess, such a short time. And yeah, like I was mentioning, Google Bard does a lot of similar things. I personally prefer Chat GPT over it just because it has a bit more customizable, but Google Bard is free. You don't need to like sign up for a plus version to get any, I guess, additional features. So I think that's good if you're kind of on a budget or just want to initially kind of explore things. But something I'll touch on in this presentation is that like the things that the AI comes out with are not always 100% factually correct. So you just need to like make sure you're checking sources. So yeah, going into the SEO slash digital marketing use cases. So one thing at my work was we were kind of utilizing Chat GPT to essentially suggest keywords to go after, and um, it got some pretty relevant suggestions. I wouldn't say it's like super great at some of keyword research so far, but it kind of does help. You just want to kind of verify that those keywords are actually being searched for slash people are has search volume. But I would say that is a good use case if you're kind of maybe on a budget and you don't have access to those like expensive keyword tools. Though there is some free ones, but that is one good use case. Um, Another one is actually content gaps. So essentially, you can kind of give it a piece of content and you basically ask for certain parts or things that may be missing. And what ChatGPT will essentially do is it'll tell you maybe to implement certain things or phrases or paragraphs and additional things. So it's really good at identifying things that your competitors are doing that maybe you aren't. So it kind of helps you to better improve some of your information there. Yeah, and continuing on the content trend, it's really great at using content briefs. So I'm also going to go out later in the presentation, but essentially what I'm using it primarily for is, at least for this instance, is I'll have it basically go to Google, and then I'll say like pick like the top 10 sites and get all like the keyword headings, and then essentially I'll have them combine them into one outline, and then I'll say like remove like the redundant um like paragraphs. Remove the redundant headers, and it does pretty good at this. But you can see like from this, it kind of will tell you like how many words you want, the type of content that it should be. So it's really cool there. Another one, which is more technical, is, for example, I'm not sure how much are you are aware with XML sitemap, but essentially it's something that sits on your website where Google will essentially visit it, and it houses all the URLs on your website. So it's kind of important when it comes to SEO. So essentially, and I would say this is probably better for like if your site's not extremely massive, but essentially you can basically ask ChatGPT to create an XML sitemap. You will just give them the URLs you have, and you can see it kind of basically spit back like XML sitemap, which is I think it's site ready. So you can see it has a URL, when it was last modified, and its correct structure and formatting. So really great if you're if you're not super technical or don't have access to some technical tools to create an XML sitemap. Next thing is metadata, which I feel like it does better at, I think, the titles and the meta description, because meta description, I don't think it has a concept of character count. So sometimes I think this one is accurate, but I know sometimes I've used it where it actually will like just go over, but it's really good at kind of suggesting things. And there's a tool called, I think it's AI PRM, which is, it's like a chat GPT, which has like a collection of prompts people are using to create some pretty robust content. So really solid there. Another thing is it's really good at selecting ADA friendly internal text and links. So as you know, the insurance industry is a bit more scrutinised as far as like websites. So we try to make sure all the internal anchor text links on our website are ADA friendly. So essentially what I did here was I basically presented them the URL, and it crawled the article, and then it analyzed some text that could be used as a internal anchor text. So for example, we have a auto insurance page, so we could use that. This is our brand, so we could link back to the homepage of that. We have a blog post on telematics insurance. So I mean, it's not like 100% accurate, at least, but it does pretty good overall, and it's always evolving. I mean, they recently had an update, so it's always getting better. Another thing I was actually personally using it for was basically creating more enticing YouTube titles. So a very important part in ranking highly in YouTube is having keywords in your title, but also having an engaging title. So I essentially used it for that, to kind of have a bit more engaging titles. And then a lot of our videos also didn't have descriptions. So essentially, sometimes YouTube will provide you with a transcription. So essentially, what I did was I basically took that, and then I had like ChatGPT make it into like a description. And then sometimes if I didn't have that, it gave you like time maps when each person was speaking. So I used some of those and then made a description from there. So I mean, the use cases are kind of endless, honestly, but these are some of the things I'm using for. And then, yeah, let me go over. This is an example of content creation that I'm using. So I'm going to just open this. So yeah, I was mentioning that I am using it for content. If this can load. Okay, so yeah, so essentially I mentioned like I having ChatGPT go through all the articles and headers, and I had it basically extract the headers, as you can see. So um, it'll basically go through each article, getting you all the headers, and this is like a process I actually used to do manually before we had AI, and it was pretty time intensive. So I think this is almost it's just amazing because I think it maybe takes less than like 5 minutes, and you can like run in the background. Whereas before, essentially, we had to kind of do it manually, or you could essentially have a virtual assistant do it. But yeah, it was pretty time consuming before. So you can see it essentially went through all of these, and we basically created this outline, combined it, and you can kind of see there's no redundancies for the most part. And essentially, what I did now is like basically create a unique article, um, and then I also have like the keywords from another tool, which is called Surfer SEO. So on the left is like how many times is in the current article, and on the right is how many times you wanted it. So this process was a bit more manual, but yeah, this is what I was initially using ChatGPT for as far as the content creation goes. But now I have a tool called ZimWriter, which is it uses the OpenAI, but essentially it's kind of similar, but it allows you to basically have unlimited tokens because when ChatGPT usually creates content, it won't create like I guess the maximum amount of unless you're set like for example, if I ask for 2K word article, it usually gives me like maybe 500 to 700 words, and you have to keep like finicking with. So like the tool I'm using now is actually helping out there and the content's ranking. So yeah, so this is kind of the overall thing, and I will I guess show you an example just so you can see it I guess out in the wild, so to speak. So I mean I would say the content is pretty good. Obviously, if you don't have like I guess super like English type writers, it's definitely good. So I mean, it's really saved me and my team a ton of time, and it's really a lot of the content is indexing almost instantly, and it's ranking in Google. So it's really been a huge time saver. So let me go on back to the presentation. Um, so yeah, something I was mentioning earlier is the ability to use AI to generate original images. So this is really good if you're a blogger or possibly someone who needs product pages or product images, because essentially before it was mostly everyone using these same stock images from stock image sites, which obviously were good, but I think almost you get a more of a benefit SEO wise if you do have original images because Google's seen images so many times on the website and knows everything. So this platform right here is Dolly, and I think I just did a Van Gogh style painting of an AI robot, which is pretty good. But I currently it's actually gotten it's better than this. So, but I personally have been using Mid Journey. So, oh, sorry, let me go back to the blog post. Um, so you can see on this image, if I get to it. So this is an actual image from Mid Journey. So you can see it's pretty like realistic and like the quality is pretty good. Um, So I mean, I've been using that, and then these are more examples, but it's really good because sometimes too, like you want like a really specific image, and it's these programs, at least in the past, I wouldn't say they were generic, but it's more like I guess like all-encompassing images, so to speak. So it's really good if you want to get like really specific and granular. And then kind of going on to the ethics and SEO impact. So this slide is more about the SEO impact. So as I was mentioning earlier in the presentation, you kind of have to fact check it, the information. I actually have a process where basically I will use ChatGPT to fact check its own content. So essentially, I'll be like, look over this content. I'll use Google to verify that the facts are true, and it'll essentially come back and it'll tell you like if it's finding references or things, because it's just important that like also to Google that like the information they're surfacing in their search results is true, because they kind of damages their reputation if it's not correct. They've also mentioned, and some of this stuff I don't agree with because I have content ranking that uses AI, but anyways, the guidance they put out is basically saying that, and some of this partially true, is that AI tools don't create unique insights or have experiences. They're just discussing and pulling information already ready available on the web. But sometimes when you do a search in Google, you do find similar information from a few of the websites, so it's just something to keep in mind. Another thing is it's been definitely certainly abused by some people. I mean, some people are putting out like 300 blog posts a month. So it's really definitely a lot of opportunities as far as like the barrier to entry to create content is very low now. So essentially anyone can do it. And something I noticed, and I think it's not always true, is that the outputs may not always be unique, but I guess if it depends on what you ask, because if I'm asking for like a definition, those might vary. But if I'm saying like write like a paper on like how is artificial intelligence like taking over the world, for example, it'll be different. So it really depends. And this is actually image from Dolly as well. So this is like the more, it's a different style. I think the prompt was like create a like an ultra realistic robot with like a frown face or something, and it came out pretty decent. But yeah, continuing on to ethical considerations. So something to think about is the transparency and fairness in applications. So I know often the data sets that they are trained on tend to be a bit biased. So I think, like I mentioned, it's important to maintain documentation of the processes and decisions. Also, doing regular audits as far as just making sure that content is not biased or unfair. And also being transparent about the sources of the data used in AI systems. I could certainly see these things becoming, I don't know if it's necessarily an issue, but I mean, there certainly are writers and artists that are not open to them using their data. So you can actually, on your website, at least now you can actually block ChatGPT from crawling your website, which I kind of found funny because they basically were crawling all our sites for like a few years now, and now they're like, okay, like we have everything, so we don't need you anymore. But yeah, continuing on to privacy concerns, kind of similar to a lot of data is essentially only collecting essential data for the intended AI purpose. Establishing and adhering to clear data and retention policies, ensure informed consent as far as what you're telling the users, what you are collecting. regulatory compliance, industry standards. As many of you're aware of now, GDPR is pretty big. So, kind of just making sure the data you are collecting there is in line with what GDPR is. Also, adhering to any standards pertinent to your industry, financial regulations, and incorporating ethical considerations into AI development. So, um, yeah, I mean, that was my presentation. I guess, is there any questions from anyone on the call on anything I presented, or if there was any questions at all for, I guess, AI and SEO, which is, I guess, my specialty?
Oh, okay. Peter, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So, Peter, President Joe Biden has passed an executive order on the AI safety.
Yeah.
So, what would the implication of that AI executive order on the creativity of AI? Uh, for instance, after that executive order, I don't, you may elaborate that, but don't you think that after that the programmers and developers of AI would be less creative and more fearful of the executive order passed on AI safety?
Yeah, I mean, I heard about that executive order, and I haven't actually read into what the order says itself, but I think there certainly needs to be some regulation. I mean, I feel like it's kind of just like the wild, wild west right now, and everyone's kind of doing their own thing. And I think AI can be very powerful, but at the same time, can be abused. And I think we've seen that in people creating deep fakes as far as videos. And I mean, you could even like spoof someone's voice. So if someone wanted to, they could create like a fake video with Joe Biden and then just using his audio. So I think it might hurt creativity a little, but I think the intent of through AI is to make everyone's life easier. And I think sometimes you have to like maybe sacrifice a little creativity, but I feel like for the most part, I think the space should be fine. But yeah, that was a good question.
Right. So, if you have any questions coming from audience in the chat box, you can answer it. Otherwise, I think we
Let
can.
me see. No, I'm not seeing any. Um, okay, I guess. Yeah, really appreciate you all letting me present. I guess will the a recording be available later? I can share it on my LinkedIn.
Oh yes, for sure. Yes, I have also recorded it, and I will definitely. We will also share it on our YouTube and all the social media.
Wonderful. Well, yeah, really appreciate you all allowing me to present. It was a pleasure, and yeah, thanks again.
Thank you, Peter, for your time. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Bye bye.
Bye bye.